Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third evening event of the Maths Meets Arts online festival. Thank you for joining us tonight for an open rehearsal. Today we are focusing on the intersection between maths and dance. So this is a work that we have been working on since last summer. It's constantly in development. And today we are kind of opening up the process to you. I would really like a lot of interaction with the audience, leaving your comments, your ideas, your thoughts as we are working together. So you're not going to be witnessing a finished product, but an open rehearsal. I'm just going to introduce the team members. So it's Lee Allison on music and sound. Hello, Lee. There he is. And it's Blandino Di Donato, who is a digital artist and a creative computing lecturer at University of Leicester. Or Blandino. Also, we have Katrin Leszke with us, reader in mathematics at University of Leicester, who is sort of the brain behind this, this project and whose research we have been engaging with to create this work. We have Johnny with us. There's Katrin. Hello, Katrin. We have Johnny with us, who will be receiving your comments and feeding us with your ideas and your voice throughout the event. You can say hi to Johnny. And ways you can engage with us. There he is. Hi, Johnny. Very important. So we're streaming on Twitch. You can leave comments on Twitch if you have a Twitch account. Otherwise, you can go to our Facebook event page. You can find a link to that page on the Twitch channel. So there are two links there. Just click on that link and you will go straight to the event page. There's a discussion tab. Please leave your comments there if you don't have a Twitch account. Otherwise, we won't be able to know what you're thinking. So I think we're about to go. Just a brief background of what we've been working on. We have been engaging with mathematics and more specifically with the area of minimal surface theory. We will talk a bit more later on about what this is about with Katrin as well. But as a general idea, think of shapes, weird shapes. That's how we sort of approached the subject, and with very, very distinct properties. So we've been using the mathematics behind this research to create starting points for improvisation, both for myself in movement and dance, Lee in music, and Blandino with visuals. Let's briefly explain what you'll be doing, Blandino, today, so audiences can know what they are seeing.
So yeah, basically I'm wearing myo armbands, which are devices that tracks the muscles activity of my forearms. And so by contracting my muscles, I will control lighting that you will see under the form of visuals. But initially, basically, they were controlled by Chloe during dance movements. But for the time being, I will be the one controlling the lighting, and I hope you will enjoy the show here on the wall.
So yes, obviously we are doing this rehearsal remotely because of this the situation we find ourselves in. But hopefully you will see some interaction. Mostly what you're seeing is improvised. We have the same starting points, and we now really like to have your input. So this is how we've been working throughout this process, and you're getting a glimpse now. We have 8 panels, 8 vignettes or propositions, however you would like to call them. Each panel shows a different property of minimal surfaces, especially the research that Katrin is working on. Can we see the panels? They will come up on screen in a bit. These are some minimal surfaces there. Good. So we have 8 panels. You will have 2 minutes to read through the panels. These might sound completely alien to you, but don't worry, we were at the same stage at some point. Just think about what you would like us to work on, basically. What would you like to see explored with image, sound, and movement? Hopefully that will help you sort of be more curious about what these shapes, surfaces are. So let's say that our 2 minutes start from now. You can send us your 4 top panels, the 4 panels you would like to see us work on today. You can do that on Twitch, commenting on Twitch, or via the Facebook event discussion tab. So I'm handing over to Lee for some sound while you're reading through the panels, and I'll be back in 2 minutes to see your choices. Have 1 more minute. Have 15 seconds. Okay, thank you all. I think we have some winners. Johnny, can you give us the numbers that we'll be working on today?
Hi, can you hear me? I can't start the video.
That's fine, I can hear
But,
you.
we have a clear winner, I guess, number 5. There were some others though that were quite close.
Okay.
Number 6 and number 8. Number 2 was quite popular. That's controversially though. That's with my vote included as well. So
Okay.
without that, it might be a tie. But yeah, I'd say 5 was the sort of overall winner.
Great. So we have 5, 6, 8, and 2.
Yeah.
I'm just repeating for Lee and Balandino. So number 2, occupy least area when bounded by closed space. Number 5, local properties define the global. Number 6, no self-intersections, no touching points. And number 8, negotiation of area into the smallest option. So great, thank you very much for engaging with us. We're gonna now go ahead and improvise. Which should we go for first, Lee? 2, 5, 6, or 8?
Local properties define the global.
Great, okay. Let's go. Okay, Johnny, if you have any comments coming through, or if anybody has any ideas to share with us, please keep them coming. Balandino, how did that work with your sensors?
Just unmute myself. Yeah, it did go well. Yeah, it just they're still getting used to the fact of minimizing or exaggerating my movements. So yeah.
Yeah, will be interesting to watch on the video after to see how it goes from the in and out. Lee, how was that?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I always feel that particular prompt is a kind of a nice warm up one. It feels like in terms of interpretation, quite a good sort of palate wetter. But I'll be really interested to see, because we have experimented with notions of the latency on the transmission. I mean, I don't know whether you've actually even explained that you're actually in Athens at the moment. So there's truly international collaboration. But so yeah, I'll be interested to see how this is translating to people watching this in another place as well. So yeah, let us know how it's all gelling. Definitely.
Yeah. So if we have people from different places on the planet, it would be nice to hear. But I think the sound is quite fine. I can hear you very well. It seems like we always have, when we do this sense of like a circular form when we work on this panel, we sort of begin the way we start. I don't know. I just think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, is there a? I wonder if there's the global element. When we talk about things being global, you often think of sort of it being spherical rather than just expansive or developing further, perhaps.
Oh, we have Johnny.
Yeah, there is a question to you probably, Chloe. It's how do you include the music in your dance, sort of more and more sort of how does it affect your movements? So the audio that Lee's doing, how does it affect your movements, basically?
I don't really think of it as including, rather than interacting with the music. For me, it's like another performer in the space, and we both work with time and movement. It's just a different way of movement, I guess. I think we speak the same language with musicians, dancers, but I cannot really explain it logically, to be honest. It just feels that we are in a dialogue when we are improvising together or just trying things out. Yeah, hopefully that answers. Thanks. Shall we move on to the next one? Balandino, do you want to choose the next one? So we have 2, 5, 6, and 8. Shall we go for no self intersections, no touching points, maybe?
Okay.
Yep. Let's just also say, just for the sake of the maths, that is an embedded surface. Minimal surfaces come in loads of kinds. The ones that Katrine is focusing on are embedded surfaces, which means that their ends extend out to infinity and they have no self-intersections. So imagine like 2 parallel lines that never touch. Right? So yeah, let's go. Okay, do we have any more questions, Johnny?
Yeah, we do. It's probably more directed towards Lee. I can completely see where he's getting at here, actually, but I'm not sure. Basically, is any of the sound you do influenced by John Cage? Because it kind of sounds like a chance composition, like I Ching. Is it any way influenced by Cage at all?
Well, improvisation sort of implies indeterminate elements. So I suppose this is a word that we would attach to Cagean principles. Yeah, I mean, he was it the Music of Changes, wasn't it? Was the using the I Ching, I think. And so, yeah, I mean, is there? I don't know whether there is sort of there is number theory in what's going on. I mean, really, I suppose in terms of the interpretation in the performance, I tend to use the cards as like a sort of overarching compositional direction. So I try and think of a concept that helps to reflect the cards, and then improvise to what Chloe's doing in a direct way, but within that sort of wider rule, if you like, in the sentence that we're presented with. So yeah, I mean, definitely. One thing that we have learned, I mean, going against probably when we do this actually live, it's probably more indeterminate and more sort of textual and arrhythmic. Whereas we discovered that with the latency issues of the provided courtesy of the internet, that actually introducing occasional sort of abstract senses of rhythm was actually quite helpful, because we'd sort of almost did this little sort of clapping exercise to work out what the latency was between everybody. So we roughly know what sort of tempos we can work with as well. So there are, I guess it's actually added another string to the bow in the sense that there's more indeterminate, random chance sort of content musically for me, and then also some more rhythmic stuff too, which is actually quite nice.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. There's another question too, this one towards you, Chloe.
Yep.
More about the space that you're dancing in. How does it affect your dancing, and as well the distance from the camera? How does that affect your dancing style?
Oh yes, it does. It really does. And now we're in a very strange situation. This work was not meant to be sort of directed for camera, so we would have been thinking about it very differently if it were. For that, this is sort of just a bird's eye view. But actually, the next panel we do, I am going to change the camera just to play with that a bit. And also the space, now that Balandino is also involved in the project, normally I would be wearing the motion detector sensing technology, the armband, and that would influence a lot the space that the audience sees. So we would be able, if this were live, to direct the audience's attention to very small areas and then expanding to bigger areas. So sort of directing the audience's focus, and that changes the composition completely. Obviously now, unfortunately, this is not as considered because of the situation that we're in, but we are going to change the view of the camera for the next panel, which is going to be, shall we go negotiation of area into smallest option? Yes, good.
Yeah.
Dino, we cannot see you, but yes, good. Okay. Ballandino, how do you approach this direction with the lighting? Under this condition, obviously. Oh, we can't hear you.
And not muted.
Sorry. So at the very beginning, as you said, I mean, they were controlled by you, and we did map a series of gestural features to the lighting. So I tried to adopt the same approach that it was set for Chloe. But of course, my body is different. I move differently. So I had to change this approach. I had to change the software implementation and the way I move, according to the way I move. And so during the improvisation process, I tried to somehow create a dialogue with what Chloe does. So sometime I go against it, sometime I mimic it, sometime I just improvise instead on the sound. So I just try to move my body along the sound and create shadows in against the wall. So what happens is that with my muscles activity, I control the brightness and colors of the lights, but then I mix them together, also creating shadows. So that's how they all comes in. Yeah.
It's quite counterintuitive what we're doing today, because normally all of these three things would be one, but now we're sort of breaking them down into different views on everybody's screen. But it's still a different work in progress, I guess.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of the things that we've sort of made some discoveries, I think, through the rehearsals and even through the performance. There's so many things that are changing, that it is still. It will be easy to look at the fact that we've had to move this online as being, you know, in inverted commas, the poor relation to doing it live, which is still will be great live, will be amazing live. But it's actually, I think it's really informed the project quite a lot doing it like this. And I think there's certainly, from my point of view, there's things that I will take from this experience to the live experience. For
sure. That's why we also need your comments. So please don't forget, we're going to go for the last panel now. So even if you have just ideas, what you would like to see more of, we're going to do a run through of all of them right after this. So you're going to have a chance to see more. Johnny?
There was just a quick sort of one, just one to Ballandino really about the aesthetic. What made you choose the colours, the palette of colours to use for it?
Well, a bit from just personal taste, and a bit also upon what we decided with Chloe. So I did take the work we did together, which was more based around the color green and blue. And then I did also some more reddish colors and purplish colors and oranges that I like quite a lot as well. So I try to have a balance between what we did before and this new situation. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. And there's one other question too from an 8-year-old. So we're getting an audience of all ages for this. I'm not really sure who it's directed at. Possibly Lee. It just says, "How does the light come in?" It's a philosophical question.
How does the light come in?
How does the light come in?
I love that quote that says it's the ones that have cracks that the light shines through. I think that's how the lights come in.
Cool, good answer. I think we'll relate to that.
But it's interesting because we've each taken a completely personal approach on our lighting situation for this online rehearsal now. But it's also three very different aesthetically different panels. Okay, shall we go for the last one? We have occupy least area when bounded by closed space. Just give me 1 second. Okay, for sure, for me, that that camera angle was not very helpful, I think. Not very inspiring. I don't know, it just felt yeah, uninspiring the way I set up the screen. Johnny?
Yeah, it's a question for Ballandino. They're asking, are you mimicking the movements done by Chloe or Elise sound triggering your lights?
So yeah, a bit of both. In some panels, like in the previous one, where Chloe had these hand movements, I was trying to go against it, meaning her hands were coming from the top, and I was trying instead to mimic, to kind of reach them from the bottom. For this panel instead, like that it was about occupying areas. At the very beginning, I interpreted this panel like, okay, I occupy first, I will first interact with Chloe, and then in the second part, more with the rhythmical part that Lee was doing. But as Lee also said that before, when working in long distances over the internet, tempo and rhythm can be very hard to follow. So it's all a bit, it might feel, from the viewer perspective, it might feel not like in tempo, which is not either my intention. So yeah, this was a bit what I did with this panel. But in the previous situation, originally, some of the lighting were actually originated also by the sound, as well as Chloe's movements. So yeah.
It's kind of encouraging, though, that people are asking that question, because if you can't tell, or that there's the possibility that other things are triggering, then I think that's a good thing.
Also, I think we might have to consider including Ballandino as performer for the physical performance, because, I mean, it's something new, but why not? Why not experiment with that as well?
Yeah.
Something to
I've got Ballandino, I've got just a personal question about the technology, really. Those armbands that you're using, do they pick up on like the electrical change in the muscle, or is it like a stretching resistance change thing?
No, basically they pick up, before I say muscles activity, but it's not either the muscles activity. Basically what they pick up is the impulses that we send from our brain to our muscles. It's the electrical activity at the skin level of our muscles. So for example, if I show you now, I turn on the lighting. For example, now here I'm trying, well, because I take off one armband, so I've got this arm without nothing, and this arm that I'm moving it, but I'm moving it because it's this other end moving my arm. And because it's not a voluntary movement, then the lighting are not triggered. But if I do this, that is a voluntary movement, so I send messages from my brain to my arm, then the lights are triggered. So what they pick up is they do what's called an electromyography, basically. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so
that was one of the that was one of the challenges when we were rehearsing back in February, was it? When having to dance, but also to control that equipment is quite challenging, because it's really fine movement that it picks up, and controlling it's very sensitive. To control the light is very challenging.
And we've got a question to you as well, Chloe. The lines on the floor, the sort of grid shape, is that affecting the way that you're dancing in any way, like a guide, unconsciously?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. To be honest, this is the first time I am using this floor to move in. They might do, I guess, unconsciously. I'm sure they do. But maybe let's try and use that as well. Now that we're going to do the run through, I'll use that. Cool. Okay, shall we run through all the panels? Do you remember the order?
Can you give us the order one more time?
Also, Mateus will be one window on our screens with what we're working on. So it's number 1 is local properties define the global. Number 2 is no self-intersections, no touching points. Number 3, negotiation of area into the smallest option. Number 4, occupy least area when bounded by closed space. Great.
Okay.
So we're gonna, just for the audience, we're gonna run through what we worked on today as one continuous sequence. This is for us as well to watch later on and see how things tie together. And you will be able to see the panels change as we perform. Okay. Unmuting.
Thinking.
Okay. That was really interesting. Thank you, guys. For sure, I think for me, with all the comments we've had as well, it made me think that I hadn't really considered many things, like the space around me. And I think it's just that transition going from rehearsing for something for a real life performance as an orientation to switching to this as an open rehearsal. But even so, the audience will pick up on details you hadn't thought about. So thank you.
Did the cat come in again then, Chloe? Is that what you're saying?
No, no cat. There's a plant though, but it's still, yeah.
Maybe Bart is bark behind the plant.
How about you guys?
I was good. I'm glad that I wrote down the cards, because I could see when Mateus was changing the cards, but I couldn't actually quite read what was going there. But I thought it felt like the. How long did we do on each card this time?
I don't know if it was even. Do you know, maybe it's a total of 10 minutes that we performed.
It felt like it was this performance. I don't know whether it's because it's online. I think it makes it more difficult, but it felt like it was sapping the energy.
I think it's because we don't switch organically or from a cue. And for me, I noticed that I was looking at the camera more. However, that made me look at Palandino more this time, which was good.
Yeah, so for me, it was it's still a bit weird because I'm not a performer myself. I'm not meant to be on stage usually. I've been before, but I haven't been on stage for years now. But so going back to it, it's definitely an experience, and especially in this way. But what I enjoyed most is more about the process as well that led us to this performance. Really, it's also about that and the way to interact. It was a new discovery, the way we interacted. Yeah,
for sure. John, do we have any new comments?
Yeah, there's a couple, both to Lee really. You may have answered some of it. I think I know the answer to this. It says, do you follow the instruction or do you follow Chloe's movement, or is it both? I suspect it's both, is it?
Yeah, definitely both. Like I say, I think that I use the text instruction as a sort of a global composition definer, if that's not where did that come from? A sort of overarching thing. So for instance, local properties define global. Well, this is where, you know, I think, well, what does that mean to the array of sounds that I have here? And that immediately makes me think of, well, perhaps I'll start with some sort of motif, which then in its smallest fashion, its simplest fashion, as the local property, and then use that to grow into different ideas. But then at the macro level of making sure that sits with directly what's happening with Chloe. But also I find a lot with dance, it's funny how even though you're improvising, I tend to also have in the back of my mind, would this work as a standalone sonic performance as well? So I'm trying to think sort of composition within that too.
Yeah. The other question for you as well is sort of approaching on the sounds that you're making. I can see a box full of all wonderful noise-making crazy equipment. Do you want to just sort of go into that a bit?
Okay, what have we got here? So, I mean, this is the exciting bit, I guess. I mean, things like cymbals and bass drums, they've been around for years. This is a sound box based on a sort of a basis of a BBC sound effects design, which really, its one main function was for a project that I was involved with, where I was trying to basically sonify two supposedly wooden beams that were hanging in a performance space with a group called the Near Miss Company. So it basically provides you with lots of creaky wooden sounds. So it's great for sort of spooky doors and floors and things like that. But it works really well with dance, because as soon as you get to any sort of attritional kind of movement, you get into this, and it makes Chloe sound like she's got a really bad back. So there's that, all that kind of tension stuff, and then the more release end, literally I've just got a load of stuff inside the box, which is kind of an embodiment of the noble improviser's art of rummaging, which is a thing, believe it or not. Rummagers fill their boxes with all kinds of things, tip them out to the floor, and basically like kids just kind of jump in and play around with them. So a lot of tension and release sounds, I would say, is probably the overall thing that I try to use with, particularly with dance.
Okay, that sort of leads into another question we just got about that sort of thing. So you've got the sharp sounds like the cymbal, and then the deeper drum ones. Which ones do you decide how to use? I think, like, is the dance informed by that? I think the question's asking, or like, is there? Do you just sort of follow what you hear or what you think will sound right? Or
yeah, there's probably two things. Again, for instance, if we take one of these, one of the vignettes. There's the negotiation to smallest. What's the actual card, Chloe? How does that come out?
Negotiation of area into smallest option.
Okay, so immediately I'm thinking that needs to finish with something small. So I've got half a coconut here with very small beads in it, which is great because you can get all this quiet detailed stuff, which is right in your ear. But then in terms of the composition, I'm thinking, well, the opposite of that, if we're going to negotiate to this small place, needs to be big stuff. So I'll go out for the big things over here, create the big stuff, which basically helps to create that compositional element of coming into something smaller.
Ooh. Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, well said. I think
Perhaps
that's
it's
about
also
it.
useful. Oh, sorry. Perhaps it's also useful to bring Katrine into the conversation as well, because I mean, for us, all of these sort of panels that we shared with you are ways of understanding the maths and not trying to represent what minimal surfaces is about, but trying to use the process for our artistic process. And we struggled a bit with that in the beginning on how to go from maths, two disciplines, maths and dance or arts in general, into something that incorporates the maths a bit more deeply rather than just representing something. Katrine?
Yeah, I remember when we sort of had these discussions early on. You had this beautiful web page, which we should definitely link as well here, where you had sort of these vignettes about sort of a particular thought in the mathematical context, how you would dance, perform with that, and what kind of movements would fit to that. So, but at the time we were sort of thinking about the performance just being sort of going through this whole thing in one go, and I thought it was very hard maybe for the audience to see how this is relating to certain mathematical questions. So if like minimal surfaces are something which are minimizing area, and we are asking how many ends are there, so how can you go out to infinity, and all these kind of questions. I felt like you had sort of worked on them and showed them in your vignettes, but they weren't part of the final performance in a sense. So I remember we had this very intense discussion where we said, this was sort of a discussion about, well, are we actually sort of giving a lecture, or are we doing something artistic about this? And I think it was a very maybe difficult moment in time, but I think the outcome was brilliant, that we included this improvisation bit on the whole performance, which then made it much more, I don't know, I really love this improvisation part of the story, because it engages the audience, and that was sort of what we're aiming for, that the audience is part of the performance, and it's not just the two of us sort of figuring out what this should be about, and that sort of this big sort of involvement of everyone.
And there's quite an interesting question about that actually, to you, Katrin, which was, do you get any mathematical insights from watching the performances?
Can I now prove a statement like the final total coverage? No, I don't. So it's not going to that level that I can sort of go and and now say I can prove something differently. But what it definitely does do is it changes how I'm talking about mathematics. So, and from this point of view, it's also impacting on how I'm seeing things. So it's not an immediate, and now I can solve that problem, but it has an impact in terms of, oh, I can now look at a question slightly differently because I have a different way of thinking, explaining things. I think I have become more visual in a sense through this whole collaboration, that I felt like I needed to explain more geometrically, more visual than sort of just saying, yeah, but that's some computation I know works, but I had to say, well, why is that actually the case? Can you explain that to me? So from this point of view, it has changed how I do mathematics quite a bit, actually.
Awesome.
I think we all learned that there's a bit of both in both disciplines, actually. There's a bit of art, a lot of art in maths and a lot of technical skill in arts as well. But I think what was interesting for me, at least, and I'm sure for the other artists as well, was to discover that there's a lot of intuitive thinking in maths and in how mathematicians go about doing research and asking questions. For sure, that works with us when we collaborate and improvise, intuition, but it does work somehow in maths as well, surprisingly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of weird. So I think for mathematicians, we are not so, I mean, we all think, yeah, we have some creative aspects of the way we're working. But I think the way the general public is perceiving mathematics, they all seem to think it's very predetermined and you're just following a particular formalism and then you go and that's the end of it. And for me, on the other hand, it was also interesting to see that things I do are the same you're doing in how you work, how you approach problems is very similar. So I think we had this, both sides I think had sort of a new insight in how things work on both sides of math and art.
Any last comments from Valandino and Lee? Things that we would take on from this for the development of this work in the future, maybe?
Well, I mean, what I can say is that how it developed, it was very interesting for me from my perspective. Basically, that I was just basically making technology accessible and usable in an artistic way, in a creative way, and then becoming an actual performer, recording the whole thing, and then so on. Reflecting on what Catherine said about, I mean, in technology, in programming, and is full of mathematics. I mean, everything is based on numbers when it comes down to coding. So maybe in the future it would be nice to implement some of those formulas in a way that it would result a bit more meaningful from a mathematician perspective. Yeah.
Great. Lee?
I don't know. I find improvisation exhausting. So I kind of just sort of hit a bit of a lull afterwards. But I mean, this particular process, working differently is always a good thing, you know. And I think if there's one thing that this whole kind of online thing has brought up is definitely not to be afraid of working differently. I don't know. I guess I'll probably would be able to answer that question when we get back into a real rehearsal room and prepare for a physical live performance. But the most important thing, I mean, I guess, you know, having an audience, I suppose, which has an international accessibility. I think this is important, because I would imagine that we've probably got people watching the event this week, and hopefully that will feed back to it, who perhaps wouldn't have been able to necessarily travel to Leicester to come and see it if it had been a live event. So I think things like this are really important. So I'm really looking forward to really delve into the feedback, actually.
Yeah. And that's also a reminder, if you haven't left your comments, to visit our Facebook event page and leave any afterthoughts that you have there as well. And also to direct you to this webpage where you can find more about the maths via the movement. So there's a bit more context there if you're interested in reading more about minimal surfaces through the eyes of a choreographer and not a mathematician. Is slightly simpler language. I think that's about it from us today. Don't forget to also leave your feedback on the Maths Meets Arts webpage. You have to click on the feedback tab. And tomorrow is our last day with overarching theme of maths and creativity. So there's a lunchtime, it's a short event. And then at 7:30, a short film by Lee, actually, and talks with mathematicians and artists. Should be a very interesting closing event. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. A big thanks from us for watching and for all your comments, both the ones that you've left and the ones that you're going to leave after the performance. And we hope to see you tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Thank you, everyone.